Go live. Good evening and welcome back to the Red Tinted Glasses YouTube channel. It is another live episode being streamed to those of you joining us on YouTube. Callum is still in his sick bed, but I'm delighted to have not one but two guests. And Callum, take note if you're tuning in. These guys have come prepared as well with notes. Welcoming back to the podcast, Johnny Main. Johnny, good to have you along to discuss happier times, because it's not normally you get to do that on this show.
No, this is a first. It's great. I've been looking forward to this all day.
Yeah. Thank you again for ably stepping in Callum's absence. And also joining us on the podcast tonight is freelance journalist Robbie Hanratty, another regular on the show from time to time. So Robbie, welcome back to the show as well.
Great to be back on the show, and likewise with Johnny, good to have something positive to speak about for once.
Yes, I know, because I think the last time you were on the show, Robbie, was when Jim Goodwin was sacked, and that was your last appearance on the show. So a lot more positivity about the place for both of you to chew over. Of course, we are reviewing the weekend's 3-0 win over Hearts, the biggest home win we've had over the Jammed Hearts in over 16 years. Not only was it a convincing win, but it was a really convincing all-round performance. Johnny, what was your initial thoughts from the weekend?
It's superb to be discussing a win for a change is the first thing. It was our intensity, the pace, the tempo we played the game at was something I've not seen for years. In fact, in my notes, I've even put early. It was early McInnes-like, right? So it reminded me of the early McInnes years, and I've not seen us playing with that intent for years. And I can't remember, exactly when it was, but it was some years ago. And it was good to get a win in an important game. It wasn't only important from a point of view of the league table, but also psychologically as well to put a marker down against Hearts to say, look, we're not going away just yet.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's well summed up. Robbie, what was your initial reaction to that win? Were you working at the game at the weekend?
No, I wasn't working it this weekend. I happened to have a weekend off because my dad was down visiting, but I did happen to see the game through various channels, and I was just absolutely delighted, to be honest, considering what had went on in the reverse fixture and with Goodwin getting sacked and everything the week after. You just thought, please, they're coming up to Batology. Their record away from home ain't that great either, which people forget. But I thought it would be a close game. I hoped we'd win, but to be 3-0 up within 28 minutes, and that's the first time that's happened since October 2020, I think it is. So Aberdeen fans are not so used to being so convincing, and I half expected them to maybe make more of a fight of it in the second half, but as you guys know, they didn't really, other than that Snodgrass effort, threaten the returning Keller Reese's goal at all.
Yeah, I know, it was quite surprising. I think Keller Roos was named in one of the teams of the week I saw. Pretty impressive for not having a save to make at the weekend. Of
Maybe
course,
the team of the week for smoking cigars. I don't know, because that's all he did.
Getting the deck chair out, but of course he was one of 3 changes that the Dons made to their starting 11. Silly old me only spotted 1 change because, of course, local lad Jack McKenzie was unfortunately replaced in the starting 11 by Liam Scales. A bit harsh on Jack, who I think has done well in recent weeks, but again, I suppose credit Liam Scales coming in and doing a very solid job in that defence, of course, that has never looked steady throughout the season. Another change was Johnny Hayes coming in for Ryan Duncan before Johnny Hayes picked up his compulsory concussion substitution that he seems to be doing week in, week out. Were you surprised at us making 3 changes? Because, of course, Johnny, Jay Horter wasn't even in the matchday squad at all. I think someone said that his partner was maybe giving birth this weekend.
Yeah, I think there was reasons for that. I don't think he was dropped as such. I was quite. I don't know. I'm quite critical of Hayes lately. Anyway, when he's been playing for us from the start, but when he was on, I thought he played really well. I mean, I don't think there was a failure in the team on Saturday anyway. And Scales coming in for Jack McKenzie I was quite happy with that as well, to be honest. Although Scales, his form of late hasn't been that good, but he played really well too. So as it turns out, no complaints for me for the changes that we made. And yeah, as I say, no failures in the 11 and the subs that came on as well.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone will have had you not complaining on their bingo card for tonight's episode. But Robbie, if Jay Horter is back for the St Johnstone away game in a couple of weeks, do you expect him to reclaim that number 1 spot, or do you think we will continue with Keller Rosen goals?
It certainly gives whoever's in charge a bit of a conundrum, because Keller Roos is contracted to Aberdeen, so you'd expect him to have that reassurances that he is the club's number 1. But then again, we bought Jay Gorter in until the end of the season on loan. He started the season at Ajax as their goalkeeper, so they'd expect him to come to the northeast of Scotland and play regular football. So it's one of these things that they both got attributes that I really like, and the two good Dutch keepers. But if I had to choose, and I was in Robson'S shoes, I'd go with Jay Gorter in goal.
It's interesting. I think I have a funny feeling that's where we would go, given that Jay Horter seems to think that he's been given reassurances of minutes and he wouldn't have come here just to sit on the bench. But, Kelros hasn't exactly done anything wrong in recent weeks. And of course, but neither's Jay. Of course, his only concessions have been from the penalty spot as well. So, although, Celtic game aside, but again, the Celtic game is a real anomaly to whether or not we can judge him. But on the game itself, Johnny, you made a point there about the fast start, the frantic nature in which we got at Hearts. And one thing we used to speak about on the podcast, certainly at the start of the season, was how slow we were in that first 45. Teams really seemed to be getting at us in the opening exchanges, but we were just a total different beast on Saturday. You could accredit some of it to Hearts not being at the races, but when your opponent is like that, you've got to take advantage, and for a change, we did.
Absolutely. I don't want to focus on how bad Hearts were. I mean, if you have a look at This Is My Story, for example, you'll see exactly what they think of how bad they were. Yeah. I want to focus on Aberdeen. I thought we were fabulous. As you said, we started really fast. We put them to the sword early on and had the cigars out by half an hour, The only slight negative is I was looking for more. So it kind of reminded me a little bit of, I think it was the Hibs game at Easter Road when we got pumped 6-0. That kind of reminded me of the way the game was, right? Because, we were in about them. Duke was terrorising them. Every time Duke got the ball, you could see the fear in the Hearts players. I think it was Hill who was given the time, and sometimes Michael Smith, who just looked completely lost every time Duke got the ball. And we had that midfield base. We're building from a strong base. So I said before on the pod, I think, it all begins at the back. If you haven't got solid foundations, you can't do anything else. You can't even think about playing out from the back and being, fancy and what have you. We have a really solid base now, whether it's by luck or judgment. We have Pollock and McDonald in the back now. And it's had it's been transformational, I would say, for us going forward. Shinnie and Ramadani are like the minders to Clarkson, who's the main conductor. He was outstanding on Saturday as well. Went a wee bit under the radar, I think, with most folk, but with Duke getting the 2 goals, and Shinnie throwing himself into tackles everywhere. I mean, we just dominated their midfield, and that's where we won the game.
Yeah, and I guess, obviously we're going to speak about the positives from Aberdeen, like you said, and that was something that we did pick up on that preview with Liam from This Is My Story, was that the midfield battle was going to be key for the game this weekend, and we won that. Callum rightly picked up that Michael Smith could be a weak point for that Hearts defence given his age, and it was something that we exploited really well. But Robbie, another area that we also exploited was Ross McCrory. Now, Johnny mentioned Leighton Clarkson. I'm going to come on to him in a little bit, but Ross McCrory is another player that seems really rejuvenated since, I was going to say under Barry Robson, but you could also argue since Jim Goodwin's left. And he absolutely terrorised Alex Cochrane, so much so that the Hearts left back was taken off after 33 minutes. I mean, as Johnny said, we can't really criticise anybody in red from the weekend, but I was very impressed with Ross McCrory's contribution in that first half in terms of driving us forward.
Yeah, absolutely, Glenn. And the fact that Ross McCrory is excelling, and he's one of these players that a lot of Aberdeen fans seem to point to criticise quite a lot. But I think this was utilised in the wrong position, playing at centre-back. It didn't suit him. He tried his best, but now in a right-back role, as we've seen against Hearts, he's getting that freedom to bomb forward. And he's also competent enough defensively, knowing he has that security of defenders that won't do anything fancy, but just good old no nonsense, just clear it. And I think that makes all the difference. Something I wanted to touch on is the fact that we've kind of just gone back to basics in a sense under Robson. None of this passing out from the back. We're allowing the midfields to press a bit more forward, and it's benefiting the attacking players to have more freedom as well and find space. So Robson said when he first came in that it might take a bit of changing because he's changing training methods, and he said it might take a bit of time with these players, but he knew what he wanted to do. And I think the last few games it's really coming to fruition. And I know, guys, we don't like international breaks, but it's maybe done them the world of good having international breaks and time in between games, because looking at the way we're coming out the traps against Hearts, for example, it's night and day from what we've been used to over the last maybe 2.5 years now.
Yeah, it just, Johnny, I know it's something that irks you, but imagine just going back to basics and not playing off of a footballing blueprint that the club wants you to play off. Imagine what results you can produce that way just by keeping it simple.
But I mean, we're laughing about it, but who wasn't entertained by that performance? I mean, I was. I thought we played some really good stuff as well. I mean, I know we were a bit more direct, but direct doesn't mean just hoof it long. We were direct. We were competitive. We were winning second balls. You know, we were always in Hearts' face. And I mean, it doesn't matter if we're playing out from the back. You know, I don't really care. That was enjoyable to watch. And I suppose when you're winning, it's always enjoyable. But I don't think we were playing hoofball. You know, I think we were playing direct football, but it's enjoyable as well.
No, and I agree. I don't think, none of the goals were hoofball. The goals were well worked. And of course, the first goal, I mean, obviously Duke's going to get all the credit for finishing it off. Yes, you could argue there was a deflection that wrong-footed Xander Clark, but I think his positioning wasn't all that great. But there was some excellent skill there from Graham Shinney in the build-up, the little turn and selling the Hearts defender the other way. And I didn't really appreciate how early on that goal was at the time, Johnny. But, 14th goal of the season for Duke. And in a game as crucial as that for both teams, it was imperative probably for somebody to get that early breakthrough, and more so, I think, Aberdeen, given how poor we've been when we've kind of gone behind this season.
Absolutely. I think it came, I think Barry Mackay was trying to mark Shinney on the left, wasn't it? Was it Barry Mackay who got skinned? Terrible. He's got dog's abuse off the Hearts fans since, I mean, he's just been dreadful lately. But he got absolutely skinned, and Shinney plays the ball in the danger area, and you're thinking, chance is gone. And then Duke just has if you don't take a shot, you don't score. I mean, it would have been easy for him just to take an easy option, take a touch, maybe look for a man to lay it off to. But he thought, well, I'm in good form, I'll just have a go. And we were a bit lucky with the deflection. But like I say, if you don't shoot, you don't score.
Absolutely. And Robbie, we spoke before Johnny joined us and before going live that goal for Duke was his 14th goal of the season. And the last time Hearts came to town, of course, Duke got on the score sheet as well. But that time was only Duke's second league start of the season in that game. It's been some rise, I suppose, if you want to call it that, or for scouts, a pretty terrible 6 months, if any scouts are listening to this podcast. I mean, he really is that cult hero that just keeps improving his status amongst Aberdeen fans, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. As one of my friends says, you could start calling us Aberdeen at this rate with the way we're playing. But yeah, he's just a man in confidence, in great form. just as Johnny was saying, that opening goal, it was great work from Graham Shinney, and Cochran obviously only half clears it. But Duke, I know it's a wild comparison, but the way Haaland played against Leipzig, when the ball just drops to him, everything that dropped him, he shot, and it just happened to have that confident knack. And I know Duke's not on Haaland's level, but we've got a very own player who just seems that he can carve an opportunity out of nothing. As you say, other people might have stumbled or took a touch or whatever. He just fired it at goal. Yes, it hit off a heel. I'm not going to pronounce his full name because I don't know his full name. It went in, but you've got to shoot to hit the target, and that's what I've been really impressed with Duke. Between him and Miovski, 32 goals between them, and just think if we started the season with a competent defensive unit, where we could be, because we're now only 4 points off a third. Their contributions have helped us a lot, but that's a great pointing out. That was only October, was it? That first Hearts game, because I remember Duke came in and he wasn't up to speed, and we didn't really know too much about him. I remember we all thought he's a bit of a box of tricks, but unpredictable. But I never thought he'd become the cult hero that he has, and I just love him, to be honest.
Yeah, because his first league start was away at Easter Road, of course, started and then got subbed off after the shambles that was. I suppose you could say the nightmare that was Tannadice was Duke's blessing in disguise, because it afforded him more of an opportunity in the starting lineup, and he's not really looked back since. And, you know, he adds another goal to make it 15 for the season. There's 6 assists in there as well, Johnny. He might not quite be our Erling Haaland, as Robbie wants to compare him to, but you can little wonder why clubs are sniffing around him. If they want to pay the price that Erling Haaland's worth, then we'll start listening to offers.
Has Haaland got 6 assists? I'm not sure. I knew this was going to come up tonight, and I was thinking I'm not even going to even contemplate Duke leaving at this moment in time. I can't think about it. I don't want to think about it because it'll just make me sad, right?
Yeah.
The day when it does come, it will come. I hope it's not this season. Hope we hold on to him for another season and we get maybe another up until January out of him. And, you know, if we do get European football and we do manage to get third and qualify for the group stages automatically, then if he could stay for that, you know, and then go in January, I'm talking about it. I don't want to talk about it, right? Because I think, like Robbie, I love him so much. He brings like the joy. He brings a smile to everyone's face whenever he's on the ball, because you just don't know what he's going to do. Sometimes, you know, you think, he's got his back to the defender here. There's no way through. There's 2 on him, and he'll just use his presence and use his physicality to just bully them. And you know, I just hope we can see that for another year at least.
Yeah, wouldn't get into that Hearts team the way Ellen Preston.
Boy, honestly.
What you say about Duke leaving? The guy at Ransom FA, he DM'd Duke and he got back saying, "My bro, I'm very happy here. Giving the club a trophy is my big goal." So he's hoping guys like Duke don't have one of these agents that try to prize him away from Bataldry too soon when he's just settling in, and his stake could rise even more over the next year or so.
But I read the article on the BBC Sport website, you know, kind of showed the beginnings that he's gone from and to where he came from, and the fact that he scored goals wherever he's gone. But he does seem to be that quiet guy. But I noticed in the comments, Barry Reid kind of picked up on something that you'd before you'd actually said it, Johnny, about, you know, if we qualify for Europe, then we should look to maybe extend Duke Miovski's contract for another year. I know Duke's got, I think, 3 years past this season on his current contract, but hopefully, you know, I liked how he did then go on to correct it and say when we qualify for Europe. But if we are to go on and qualify for Europe, hopefully that is an incentive for both those players to stay at Tawdry for another season. And I think, you know, as much as we don't want to think about it just now, it does feel like we really do need to enjoy Duke whilst we can. And, you know, I was listening to Sports Sound on the way back from the game on Saturday, and the clip that they played was of Duke's second goal. and you almost don't hear the crowd cheering. All you hear is Duke, and it just sounded like on the radio that everybody was just booing. But it's the fact that the whole crowd is doing that instead of cheering. He's literally got the Aberdeen support eating out the palm of his hands.
Yeah, I mean, he has, in a season that has had a fair few downs, the emergence of Duke, as you say, even since October, which is an insanely short period of time, it's just been incredible.
I think it's very much Robbie's probably going to clean up at the Player of the Year awards.
Yeah, you'd imagine. So it's just what folk were saying to me, like, because you only hear bits of it on the commentary, but even the South Stand were leading the Red Shed on Saturday and getting right involved with the chanting and the feel good. And I just think having an exciting player that will get people off the seat will galvanise and has galvanised the Aberdeen support through, which was a very torrid time and very sad time to be a supporter just 6 weeks ago. So yeah, I do think he will be taking away plenty of awards, if not them all, come the Player of the Year awards.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to join me and Callum at the Player of the Year awards, a couple of the guys from my work that were supposed to be joining us have pulled out, so we've got a couple of spare seats if you want to join us in attempting to get a restraining order from Duke on that night, because no doubt that's how it'll end up at this rate. But back to footballing matters, because we could sit here and speak about Duke all night, but people want to hear our thoughts on the rest of the game. Of course, that second goal came about, a beautiful header from Duke, but equally brilliant ball in from Watford loanee Matty Pollock. And Robbie, as much as we're lauding over Duke just now, Matty Pollock is another player that really seems to be falling into a fan's favourite. That dreaded old do not fall in love with loan players. He's firmly fallen into that category.
Oh, not another Hector Madison again. I know. I watched his interview on Red TV, and then I read the article in the paper with the media guys, and just the passion he shows in his interviews and on the pitch with that little fist bump, ready winning and makes a challenge. And the guy, for being a lone player, he just gets it, and you see the enthusiasm with that assist and then his subsequent goal over to the Red Shed and with the Aberdeen supporters when he scored. And for a young guy, he seems a very mature head as well when he's on the pitch and when he's speaking. So I'm sad to see that Watford are only calling him a temporary player at Aberdeen, and is talk of Chris Wilder wanting him back, because if we could go out and pull the stomps out to get Matty Pollock long term, I would love to, because it's just been chalk and cheese having someone like him in the team.
Yeah, no, I saw the article the weekend, today, that Watford said that Matty Pollock, it was all about him this weekend as he took pride of place in a stellar performance at his temporary club in Aberdeen. And I was like, well, hopefully we can temporarily extend it into next season as well, and they can just keep Ryan Porteous. But, Johnny, Robbie mentions about players buying in to what it means to play for the club. And we see that from maybe players that are here on a permanent basis. Graham Shinney, a prime example, in his first spell, and then, even returning now on loan. But Matty Pollock, a guy who's only been here a month and a bit, really seems to understand. Of course, Robbie mentioned the Red TV interview where he speaks so well about the fans and what it means to play for this club. Also speaking as well about the fact that he lost his auntie recently, and he missed the funeral on Friday so that he would be involved in the matchday squad and could play, and maybe written in the stars the fact that he goes on to score this weekend, and some of his family were actually in attendance at Pittodrie on Saturday to see that.
Yeah, he seems like a humble guy, a really nice guy. Not only that he gets the club. I think maybe that's maybe this is the Barry Robson effect coming to play here. I wonder, if the previous manager had been still in post, whether or not he would have the same grasp of what it means to play for Aberdeen. But he definitely has that. He has enthusiasm. But he's a damn good player as well, and he loves defending. As you say, the little fist pumps when he kicks the ball out or whatever, makes a good tackle. He loves defending. And another thing, we're not asking him to do something he's not comfortable doing, right? So again, the system probably suits him, him and Angus MacDonald. I think MacDonald's probably a bit more cultured of the two, not massively so, but still, we're not talking about, Baresi here or anything, but we're just saying that they're both competent defenders. And I think Matty Pollock has probably been the more impressive of the two that we brought in. And all credit to him. He's a fan's favourite, and I just think with him and MacDonald at the back, I think we're a lot more solid, and we don't look like a bomb scare whenever the ball comes into our box.
No, we don't. But I think, you could maybe say Pollock's more of a fan's favourite, and because obviously he's come out with the, the sound bites that, of course, fans love to buy into. But McDonald's maybe more of that no-nonsense defender, but just goes about his business quite quietly. But Matty Pollock seems to be a presence at both ends of the pitch. He does the defensive duty, as you mentioned, but he's also that threat from set pieces and, stooping down low to head us into that 3-0 lead. I don't know, Johnny, the header in the second half, did it hit the post or
no,
as well?
Was it saved it? Yeah.
Yeah, so, presence on both sides.
Yeah,
exactly.
Too easily.
Of course, his goal against Motherwell was ruled out as well. So, yeah, no, I definitely think, is showing that threat at both sides of the pitch, which is obviously endears him more to the fans. But definitely we are looking more solid at the back with Goose and Maverick, as I know Freya McQuarrie likes to call them. Although it's not really hard to look more solid when we had Scales and Stewart previously. As we said, of course, Matty Pollock does head us into a 3-0 lead. Robbie, you spoke to me again before we went live about Bojan Miovski. You wanted to pick up a point on him from his performance at the weekend. Another quiet weekend for Bojan, but quietly effective potentially.
Yeah, I think he was the Macedonian striker. I just think he was making that runs into the channels and creating space for his teammates. So sometimes maybe we're spoiled at the moment to have two strikers that can bang in the goals. We've so often relied on that one individual up top. So people will maybe rightly or wrongly point to Miovski, he's not scored in these games. But as you say, he's doing work and still providing a positive contribution for the team, and then it's benefiting the likes of Duke, and even with Pollock, who knew he had a cross like that in him. And then, as we know, with that third, Leighton Clarkson is a reason why he's on Liverpool's books, because he has that delivery in him. And all these little things, if he was going to watch carefully, Miovski's movement probably helps each time.
Yeah, and I think that was something that I certainly noticed. Patrick, who I stand with at the games, he picked up a couple of times that Miovski was making those darting runs and nobody was passing him the ball. We were going wide instead, but Miovski's runs were drawing Hearts defenders with him because he is that presence in the air. And as you said to me, Robbie, I think they combined for 32 goals between them, both Duke and Miovski. So we finally got a combined threat up top. And if one's scoring, we're not too bothered if the other one's not, because goals are coming from all around the pitch. But Johnny, you mentioned Leighton Clarkson in your summary of the game, and it's a player I want to kind of speak about as well, because it's a player that in these sorts of games, I think I was maybe critical of Leighton Clarkson at the start of the season. I thought he was maybe going missing. He wasn't kind of suited to that nitty-gritty battle that we need in a game like Hearts. But as Robbie mentioned, quality delivery for that third goal. But he really stepped up in terms of putting himself about, putting in a challenge. And for once, I actually thought he was keen to do that dirty work that, we're maybe more accustomed to the likes of Ramadani and Shinnie doing.
Yeah, he did. I mean, my memory of the game is his creativity rather than his dig, I suppose you could say. I would say, although I do remember a couple of tackles he put in, I'm thinking he's really up for it. But I was my hands over my eyes at the same time because I remember a couple of his tackles earlier in the season that have got him in trouble. But it was good to see him being more involved. But like I say, I think that may be a result of the system we're playing and the system that Hearts were playing that gave him that much space, right? So he had the freedom of the midfield really to pull the strings, and he was superb. But that's because he was allowed that because Shinnie and Ramadani did their usual job, that's the way I saw it anyway. So maybe I need to go back and watch the game again to see more of the dig from Clarkson. But I don't associate that with him necessarily. But I don't think he needs to be that nasty kind of presence. He was outstanding.
Yeah, I just thought maybe it's because I'm more critical of him in some situations where I think he doesn't necessarily track back or put in that effort, sometimes defensively. And I thought he was doing that more in the game on Saturday. And I think when a player does something that you're not used to seeing them, it kind of takes your attention more. But again, as maybe Robbie says, was probably why he's on Liverpool's books in terms of that quality, that all-round players finally coming through. And I suppose, Robbie, as Johnny says, it's maybe also down to the system that we're playing. We're now beginning to see the all-round side of Leighton Clarkson, not just the worldies that he scores.
Yeah, I was just as critical of him during that Barron spell when things just weren't going right for the club, and thought he was just one of these luxury midfield players that wasn't going to track back, put a tackle in, and just come out with a worldie, and I thought we couldn't carry someone like that. But having that, and I think it all goes back to why the midfielders are now pushed up a bit more because of the way we're playing under Robson. It's allowing him more freedom to roam and find those passes, because we've seen it against Dundee United, we've seen it in the game against Hearts. He's now benefiting from it, and I was looking there from 25 Premiership matches, 4 goals and 5 assists for Clarkson, and that's in a season that's a team that was devoid of confidence. So you think about it, looking at going back to Pollock's comments of the team are all buying in and loving what Robson are doing. I know we're going to that discussion fully, but maybe with everyone buying and singing from the same hymn sheet, it's benefiting. We went through so many players, and as you said at the start, we could probably highlight each individual player and think what contribution did they make, and it'd be a positive one for a change. It's not often to say that.
No, it's not, and I suppose as well, given the fact that I think I read an article as well with Leighton Clarkson where he said there was a potential for him to be recalled in January, but he turned the opportunity to go back to Liverpool down because he wanted to stick at Aberdeen because he knew he was getting the minutes, and it was a good opportunity for him to impress and show what he can do. And I think, under Barry Robson currently, he is getting that opportunity to do so. And yeah, I mean, I think, Robbie, you're right. We could sit here and laud over most of those players from the weekend. I think the biggest surprise, maybe, Johnny, as well, was how poor Hearts were this weekend. But I think the fact was we didn't give them many opportunity to be good this weekend. But if you want to sum up Hearts' weekend, you just have to look at that one-on-one Robert Snodgrass had in the second half. I mean, that was painful to watch, even in the red shed, watching him run through on goal. It seemed to take forever for him to reach the box.
He was towing several caravans, I think. I was actually surprised he lasted. Did he last the full game? I can't remember, but he was an injury doubt coming in, I think.
Yeah.
So I was surprised. He lasted as long as he did. But yeah, it's nice to be talking positively about our team and to be able to laugh at the opposition and how bad they were. And it being Hearts makes it even sweeter, I suppose. It's one of your rivals at the end of the day. So to be able to laugh at how abjectly pish they were, it's like tables turned. So it's nice to do that. But I would temper that by saying they're still favourites for third because they're 4 points ahead of us. And calm down. We will drop points, I'm sure, between now and the split, even, and after the split, obviously, as well. But we're in the fight and we're in the battle, and it's just enjoyable to see the meltdown on social media of all the Hearts fans. It's quite kind of reminiscent to us not that long ago, seeing the meltdown. And I just think this is going one way for Nielsen. Not that I care about Robbie Nielsen one little bit, but he's on borrowed time there. Even if they do get third, which I still expect them to do, the genie's out of the bottle there in the same way it was for Goodwin all those months ago. It's not long.
Yeah, it's about time the Hearts fans got a bit of a reality check. Of course, you say it's 4 points is the difference to third. The 5, yeah, 5 given the goal difference. Of course, the demolition that we had in the capital back in January, February time meant that our goal difference has taken a right hammering. Of course, I think it's Hearts are on +6, we're on -6, so really it is 5 points if you want to include that. But Robbie, Johnny says Hearts are still favourites for third, but do we have a bit of momentum behind us? Do you think we can catch them for third place?
Yeah, I think we do, considering that only 6 weeks ago, 29th of January, we're all sitting here thinking, is relegation a serious probability? It just shows maybe how poor the standard of Scottish Premiership is behind the top two, because Hearts are in meltdown among their fan base and they're still in third, and they've only won 1 of the last 5 games. And I don't think it maybe could come as a surprise that they're downturn recently, because watch the game against Motherwell, the 2-0 defeat back in February, and it was all over the place, and I just don't think there's something wrong in their dressing rooms. So looking at the fixtures, they have Kilmarnock, St Mirren, Hibs and Ross County, and we have St Johnstone, Kilmarnock, Ross County and Rangers. And with Rangers game being at home and the magnitude of that last game for the split, I can honestly maybe see it going down to it. And obviously is a split as well, so we can be there or thereabout on their coattails going into the split, win away from home, which we thankfully done against Dundee United, try get that momentum on the road as well, which we have done at home. And yeah, I'm unlike Johnny, I'm very optimistic today on this podcast, and I think we can keep on their coattails at least and be very competitive in this race for third, and hopefully I'll be seeing you guys on a European tour in the summer.
Yeah, that would be very nice. I'm glad that Robbie's keeping up Calum's level of optimism and Johnny's going with my more realism level.
I would slightly. I'll just say I don't. That's not to say that I think Hearts are a better team than Aberdeen. If you were to put the 11 players side by side, I challenge you to pick more than 2 or 3 Hearts players out of that over the Aberdeen players. I just think we're a better team.
I know. I wish we got Robert Borthwick on the podcast this season after the last time we got him on.
I don't get it. I don't see what it is that they are so upset about, because I look at that team and I just think journeyman. I don't see anything that excites me about them. And their most creative player is Barry Mackay, for fuck's sake.
I mean, again, they're where they are down to their home form, and the fact that away from home, I mean, they've got the same record away from home as us, apart from the fact that they can draw the nitty gritty games. We just collapse our arse in them and I've lost them. But I spoke about momentum to Robbie, Johnny, but also backing this result up, because it's all well and good and going putting that pressure on Hearts by us going to fourth. When we did speak to Liam, he said, they've got Kilmarnock coming up and they've not got a great record at Rugby Park. We've got St Johnstone away, of course, a ground we've already won at this season. It's almost imperative that we go and win when we come back from the international break in Perth, to really show that, that Hearts game wasn't just down to, because the media will spin it sure one way that, it was a poor Hearts team or a poor Hearts performance. No, we are here and we are serious about finishing in, if not third, the top 4 anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the fact we might have given ourselves too much to do to get third doesn't make us a less of a better team. I think we need to beat St John. I think we'll beat St Johnstone in Perth. I don't know. I think their record in Kilmarnock is abysmal, so it wouldn't surprise me to see them drop points. So if we, and Hibs are playing, they've got Hibs to play before the split as well, haven't they? So
they play Hibs they play Hibs the weekend that we have Ross County on the Friday night as well. So
they're not confident at all at the moment. And something needs to happen. And I heard there's a rumour flying around that Robbie Nielsen's away to get his hair done, hair transplants done in Turkey, which, if he comes back with an afro, will be the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life, and pure banter. The Hearts fans might actually implode.
No, they might, but I did enjoy this comment from Skokesker saying, if we do beat Hearts to third and Jim Goodwin relegates Dundee United, is that our best season in a long time? I mean, certainly in terms of banter, it would be certainly up there, and pretty impressive given the head start that we gave to Hearts at the turn of the year as well in third to recall that and overhaul them. But a long way to go, a lot of football still to be played between now and then. Between now and then as well is who's going to be the next permanent Aberdeen manager. Of course, another hot topic on the back of the weekend is, has your opinion changed on Barry Robson managing the Dons full time? Now, Stewie Walker, I saw on Twitter, put up a point about, how much longer are Aberdeen fans going to go on about Barry Robson beat a poor Motherwell team, a poor Dundee United team? I already commented about the Hearts game. People will maybe look at that Hearts didn't turn up for that first half hour. People will look to find the negatives in the Heart performance to use against Barry Robson. But, Robbie, do some of us as fans need to sit up and take notice of what Barry Robson is doing? Is this one of his most impressive results in his pitch to be the next Aberdeen manager, I suppose?
Yeah, absolutely. He's got 4 wins from 6 games, and you can't look past that. We couldn't buy a win before he came in under the previous boss, who was supposed to be good at these things. So you think to yourself, yeah, if that's his addition to be the next boss, whether he says he wants it or not. Graham Hunter on Twitter said that he spoke to Robson and he said he wants the job. Obviously, publicly, he hasn't really came out and said that, but he's getting the results. And guys, I've had to swallow some pride because I was pretty against making Robson for more than a couple of games, really. I was wanting to get a permanent manager in place, someone experienced, and kickstart the season. But who knew we had someone in our academy on the books who has managed to do that? Whether or not he's the man long term, I don't think so. But I wouldn't stop when he's done this turnaround in the coaching methods and getting results and a tune-up with these players. It's probably the right thing to at least give them to the end of the season. And if they're going to have someone in mind as a long-term successor, maybe have them watch on from the side. But I don't know what you guys' opinion is. I think it'd be too rash now with the results Robson's had to suddenly tear it all up.
It's a difficult one, but I think as well with Graham Hunter, I did see that tweet and then I saw someone reply to it saying, well, Graham Hunter told us that Stephen Glass would be a good manager, and look how that turned out. And I mean, we could be riding the wave of Barry Robson just now in terms of winning games and things are going right. But Johnny, what's your thoughts? Has Robson won you over in terms of seeing him permanently, or should we still be looking at having somebody else with Robson involved in terms of the coaching team?
I'll tell you one thing: he's not made himself and Steve Agnew. You have to also acknowledge the role that Steve Agnew must be playing there as well. They have made the job of the Football Monitoring Board incredibly difficult. Yeah, because
getting that in there.
I don't know the answer. I don't know if Robson is the man for the job, and that is me being genuine here. But you cannot deny what he's done and what himself and Steve Agnew have done since he took over. If you remember where we were when he took over that role and where we are now with 4 wins out of 6. And one of those defeats was at Celtic Park and the other one was when we had 10 men for most of the game against St Mirren.
Yeah.
it's it's nothing short of immense, the job that they've both done. That doesn't mean I think that he should get it. I don't know the answer. I don't know if the answer is bringing somebody else in. This is why it's such a conundrum. And I just, the only thing I will say is now I would be less bothered if they give it to Robson full time. I would say he's earned it. He's had his audition. He's earned it. The only thing I would say is potentially, if they were going to give it to him, have they not interviewed enough other candidates to make that decision now? And if they were going to give it to him, and if they were thinking he's the favourite, why wait any longer? Why not appoint him now? And I think the problem with leaving it until the summer is we need to be bringing in players and speaking to players now around about April time for who's coming in for next season. You want to give them an idea of who's going to be on the coaching staff, unless Barry. I mean, the ideal, and I don't know if this is possible, but the ideal scenario for me would be an experienced manager to do the managing side, and Barry Robson as first team coach and trainee, so he can step up to the big job the next time it comes available. But that, I don't know, that's a utopia I don't know exists.
Yeah, and I think you're right to mention Agnew in all of this, because of course Robson mentioned it himself that Steve Agnew is up here on a favour to Barry Robson in terms of helping him out. So who's to say that if Barry Robson gets the gig permanently, Steve Agnew's going to hang around for however long Barry Robson's here? What's also to say that this upturn in form is purely down to Barry Robson and Steve Agnew is not some form of mastermind behind it, a la Steven Gerrard and Michael Beale at Rangers, where a lot of people said that Michael Beale was really the brains behind the operation and Steven Gerrard was just the face of it. Could that be something similar that we are seeing here? We appoint Barry Robson as the new manager and Steve Agnew goes back down south over the summer and things go to pot. Then we look silly and we could be back here in a year's time. But, as always, when we do these lives, it's great to have people, coming along with your thoughts as well. And Kaiser brings up a point here as well, that are some of the folk that we've been linked with, are they not ticking some of the boxes for him personally? Are any of them even better than Robson? And Ricardo Rodriguez was a name that's been widely linked with the Aberdeen job. And he says, what has he done as a manager? One good season in Japan. I think he's actually had a couple of seasons in Japan. Of course, he actually led his team to the Asian Champions League final and then left them once he got them to the final because he was looking for a job in Europe. So, he's got pedigree in, well, the Asian European competition, whatever you want to call it. That's what I'm going with. But the point on the new manager that Skokesker brought up, Robbie, was, of course, Alan Burrows in his Red TV interview mentioned bringing in a new manager before the end of the season. Again, kind of on the point that Johnny was making, so that somebody could come in around this sort of time to assess the options of what the current playing squad is like and look ahead to next season. Of course, a few of you have mentioned in the comments as well the amount of loanees that we've got. So there is going to be a slight rebuild, of course. You've also got Angus MacDonald on that short-term permanent deal. So he'll be out of contract in the summer as well. If you look at maybe Anthony Stewart's future, probably looking like being elsewhere. Liam Scales will return to Celtic. So, you're going to have to build that centre defence as well. Do you think, Robbie, of course, Chris Harvey had Don's Twitter in a spin with his "No way, Jane" trying to be deciphered on social media. Do you think, we could see a manager appointed between now and the St Johnstone game? Because if social media was to believe last week, it was certainly expected that announcement was going to be made pre-Hearts game.
Oh, all these insiders on AFC chat, Twitter, Facebook, it was blowing my mind. what was going on. But what I would like to say, like Burrow said in that interview about he would like a manager in ASAP at that point. But you've got to think, did the club expect Robson and Agnew to do such a good job from the way we were? Probably not. So it's probably turned a few heads from the football monitoring board, and it's not been a rethink, because surely you wouldn't go to such a process over the last month and a half to ditch it. But maybe they're just halting things a bit. But I think Johnny made a good point earlier with the contracts around April. I think it's 14 players out of contract or on loan, because you've got guys like Dean Campbell, Conor McLennan. Adding from that 14 players, you've got players like Polvara, who we don't know if will ever return. You've got Shayden Morris, who is injured but we've hardly seen, and you've got Jaden Richardson, who is been totally out the picture since that capitulation before Christmas. So we've got a core of players who I think if we can keep, like Duke and Miofsky and Shinny on a permanent, it'd be fantastic. But for attracting new talent, it's not just attracting a manager. You need that pitch. Yeah, the club's massive. We're fighting for Europe. We might be in Europe, but you want to have someone in place. And my other slight concern, no offense to Barry Robson, is he's got no track record. And I know Will Still over in France might argue, but he's got no track record of a rebuild. Yeah, he's a good manager, as it seems. He's a good trainer. He's getting the best out of his players. His philosophy's coming through. But has he got the contacts at his age and that time in his career to get arguably half a squad or three-quarters of a squad in January, now in the summer? I don't know, but that maybe comes into the fact, Glenn and Johnny, why an experienced head or a change higher up by a director of football. There's rumours that, I don't think, it might just be nonsense, but Stephen Gunn could move into Rob Wicks's role and could be a whole change behind the scenes. I don't know. But maybe something like that Robson wasn't left just to his own devices. And because I think as a manager, he's clearly, or as a coach, he's showing that he can be very competent. And if Aberdeen don't snap him up, I wouldn't be surprised if other teams go and look at him, to be honest. And I think that's what the board should also be worried about, because once you get a taste, you guys will probably know from your own jobs, you get a taste of a senior role in what you're doing, you don't really want to drop back down to be second fiddle again.
No, and that's the point that Kaiser makes as well, Johnny, is that Robson's had a taste of management now. He's not going to want to go back to just being an assistant or a coach of some kind. And I don't actually know. I think he might be quite happy going back to developing that youth. Part of me just has that feeling, but it is a very reasonable point of view to have that Kaiser says that Robson, the more he enjoys success, the more he'll want to do it on a more permanent basis and maybe won't be accepting of being somebody's number two. And as Robbie rightly says, you will find someone that would like to snap him up, maybe more in Scotland just now, but it is impressive what he's done in this certainly second interim spell in charge.
Absolutely. I mean, if he doesn't get the job full time and isn't involved in the backroom team of the new man, the next vacancy that comes up in the top division of the Championship, he's going to be a shoe-in for, right? You know, and it's not going to be Rangers, unless it's Rangers or Celtic or Hearts or Hibs, right? Anybody below us, Robson would be Bookie's favourite. I mean, we can all have a laugh at that, right? But you can guarantee he'll be top of the list, first out of the gate, because of what he's done. And the worry for me is, as Robbie was saying, and as you were saying, Glenn, is how do we keep him happy if he doesn't get the top job? Because the last thing I'd want to see is him going off to manage, let's say, Dundee United in the Championship, for example, looking ahead a wee bit, which I could see happening, right? I could see that happening conceivably, and him making a success of it and then coming back to haunt us, you know? How that would be a terrible feeling if we had the chance to give him the top job. But again, that doesn't make it the right call at this moment in time. So the ideal scenario for me would be to try and find a role for Barry in the first team setup. Now, Celtic did it with Postecoglou. They said, look, here's your backroom team. Come in. There you go, Ange. Right? We've seen how successful that's been. So it's not completely without precedent that, or necessarily the case that someone who comes in will have to bring in their own team. But yeah, I think, just to finish up the point, I think all three of us can agree, 6 games of Barry Robson, he's shown an awful lot more competence in the job than the previous 2 incumbents. And for that, we're massively grateful.
Yeah, we're massively grateful, and I think that's definitely something that the Aberdeen support can unanimously agree on. But I think we can also agree on the point that Michael Taylor makes, that it's a tough call, and I think the 3 of us, as well as Michael Taylor, will be glad it's not us making the decision, because there's a lot of pressure on that decision. But Robson certainly, the longer he goes on in charge, is making it harder for the men at the top.
Stephen Gunn will be knocking on Burrows' door going, so when's Rob Wicks moving on then? Because I wouldn't like to be in the football monitoring board, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, that leads me nicely on to the next point. Johnny, thank you for that. Is, of course, the club announced this week that Rob Wicks will be leaving the club after 5 years at the club to take over a role at the P&J Live. What do you make of the departure of Rob Wicks, Johnny? Because he's been at the club, as I said, for a while now. He's done a lot for the club commercially, improved the sponsorship deals, and certainly this season with the sponsorship from Texo. But he's also been quite a driving force behind a lot of the fan initiatives. Someone that was integrated with the DNA side of things. I know that's certainly a scheme that divides opinion, but in terms of improving match day experience, Rob Wicks always seems to be at the forefront of a lot of the ideas, with the beach ballroom idea, a driving force behind the Red Shed as well. Will he be a big miss to the club?
Potentially, yes. And I say that not knowing him personally. I've never met him personally, but from his track record at the club, with the sponsorship deals, the commercial department seems to be a success story at the club in times that have been fairly turbulent. And so you can always point, if you look at it this way, right, we bring in less through the gate than Hearts and Hibs, but I think we bring in more overall because of the commercial department, right? So that's a huge credit to him, tapping into the economy of the North East, which has taken a battering over the last sort of 10 years even, Think about the headwinds that the North East economies had to deal with, and we've still managed to turn more revenue over every year in that department. So full credit to him for that. The fan initiatives, again, I don't know. I don't get to that many games over, as you know, so I can't really speak to that. Maybe I'll leave that to you two to talk about. But yeah, he seems to be a personable enough guy, and anyone who's met him seems to have a lot of nice things to say about him.
Yeah, Robbie, I don't know how much dealings you've had with Rob. I've obviously had a couple of dealings with him. He's been on the podcast, of course, when we were speaking about the stadium. I know, again, that's something that he's been involved in, so how much a miss maybe some of his expertise around that will be moving forward, in however many years it's going to take for that stadium to be built. But, again, other involvements, of course, is the BOA, the by official appointment, getting local businesses involved with the club to then give season ticket holders and DNA members opportunity to get discounts. He's really engaged the business community with the club, and I certainly think he's done a lot of good for the club. I've not necessarily agreed with everything that he's done. I think there was, when he tried to bring a Mexican food van to the game at Tawdry, I just felt like, well, we don't really need that. We're quite good with just a pie and a bovril. But, he's certainly not been afraid to try something different. I mean, you just even need to look at the corporate offerings at the club. He's changed that to, I think, more of a buffet option instead of 3-course dining. And as Johnny says, the commercial side of things continue to grow. But what's been your experiences of dealing with Rob? Because I know you've dealt with it professionally as well as from a fan point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. I've dealt with him several times, and he's always came across as a ultimate gentleman and a guy that's got time for you, to accommodate you, anything to do with the club. And I think everything you highlighted there his positives. And when he came into the club after, I think he's got 25 years experience in sports, global sports marketing. So someone of that experience to lose is a blow. I know Burrows was well known for his fan engagement, and I think he might pick up some of that for now. Although we all know he's got a hell of a job on his hands with the managerial side of things. But you know what? I think that Rob Wick's announcement came on the same day as all that rumours of a managerial one, because it caught me off guard, because I didn't expect him to suddenly leave and go to the P&J Live Arena. So overall, he's been a driving force behind so many initiatives, but now they're in place.
Yeah.
He's done the groundwork, so surely that can still continue, because from what I've heard, I've not been to the things at the Beach Ballroom. I know my friends at Hitless said it was a success last time they had them playing in Lee Miller, and they're doing more to get between him and Dave Cormack. They've always been saying, I think it was halted due to COVID, but there was always on about a marquee. Maybe for the European games, that would be class if it did, like outside over at the cricket pitch. And whoever comes and carries that can, I'm sure Rob Wicks will be passing on a lot of experience and a lot of. I think he's done, and people will probably come in the comments and say, like, as you mentioned, Mexican bands, and there's a few things, if I could be picky, I could say, but I wish him all the best, to be honest, in his next role.
Yeah, and I think, go on, you go, Johnny.
Sorry, he seemed to be second in command for me at the club before Alan Burrows came in. He was always the one you would see on Red TV with Dave Cormack having when they were being interviewed together. I always got the impression that they had a really good relationship. So maybe now, I don't know, maybe he feels a bit marginalised now that Burrows has come in. I really don't know, but obviously he's seen a good opportunity and he's taken it, and I suppose we would all do the same.
Yeah, well, I think, the point you make, Robbie, is a really good one. The fact that he has laid the foundations there, and we've got someone with the kind of expertise and knowledge of Alan Burrows to maybe go and develop that even further. But, my friend Keith made a good point at the game on Saturday. He said, I just wonder if Rob Wick's leaving kind of coincided with our approach to Alan Burrows. If, there was just maybe that little bit of kind of walk over between the two, Wicks maybe handing in his notice, potentially being headhunted, because I noticed he said it was an opportunity he couldn't turn down. So I wondered if they maybe approached him rather than he applied for the role. And with him taking it, we made the then move to, get Alan Burrows on board, and Alan's potentially got the capabilities to cover some of the work that Rob has done. And obviously that's something that we can potentially put to Alan when he comes on the podcast at a later date as well. Like anything, not everybody's going to be happy with everything that Wicks has done at the club, but I think by and large, he's had a lot of positive impact on the club. So thanks for his efforts, and you never know, we might get him back on the podcast at a later date if he returns some more involvement going forward. So that kind of really sums up everything that's happened since the last time me and Callum convened. Of course, it's been great having a lot of you tuning in for over an hour on this Wednesday evening, commenting. And remember as well, if you are watching live, to leave a like as well on the video as well. I suppose one final point was the move of our last game before the split. The Rangers home game has been moved to Sunday, 4:30 live on Sky Sports. I'll just get your guys' thoughts on that. Johnny, I'll start with yourself.
Carnage. All day drinking and then down to Pittodrie afterwards. It's tempting.
Yeah, you're tempting to find a flight for coming over, are you?
Tempting. I might keep that one quiet for a while.
Yeah, we'll just make sure the missus doesn't watch this one. But Robbie as well, given the fact that depending, of course, Johnny said we may drop points between now and the split. Of course, this could be a game where going into it, we know what happens win and in, potentially, depending what happens between now and that game. What's your thoughts on that game being moved to the Sunday and also live on TV?
Yeah, two things from what you just said there. Everyone keeps on mentioning, we're 4 points behind Hearts, but it's so congested. A couple of bad results could suddenly end up the likes of St Mirren or Livingston behind us. So after being so positive, I would love it to come. I would hate for it to come down to having to be at pathology on that last game before the split, and that sort of situation happened. Because after the last Rangers game, I think I'd be in tears. But on the topic of it being a Sunday, I think it's usually the last game before the split are the top. Oh no, that's at the end of the season. At the top six and bottom.
That's
Yeah.
I'm just glad that it's not a Sunday lunchtime kickoff, but as has also been picked up, depending what the outcome in the Old Firm game is, I think it's the week before. It could, of course, be the opportunity that a win at Pittodrie would mean that the title challenge is officially over as well. So I think, Johnny,
that could be tasty.
I think your assessment of the game being moved to Sunday at 4:30 is carnage. I'm sure Police Scotland were delighted when they saw that notice pop up as well, seeing 4:30.
It's in a row for Aberdeen, is it? Ross County on the Friday, and then the next weekend it's the Sunday. So fairly self-shown to the wider public.
To Robbie's point, we're not going to be negative tonight, though, because I think we'll get 9 points from the next 3 games. So, I think 9 points going into the split would be pretty acceptable, but I still think we can give them a bloody nose as well. And if we could beat them and end their title officially,
whilst boosting our European hopes would be very good as well.
Absolutely, but it would be good to give them a bloody nose.
Definitely. One question as well before we wrap up then. Lee Seymour's posed a question. One last question, lads. 9 games to go. Does Duke beat Miovski to top scorer? Yes or no? Robbie?
Yes, I think he will.
No, not for me.
Yeah, no. I'm with you, Johnny. I don't think he will either. I think as well, purely because Bojan's also on penalties as well. Not that we're like Rangers and get a penalty every game, but I think the fact that he's on them will see Bojan take more. But delighted to have Johnny and Robbie join me on the podcast tonight. As I said, also delighted to have so many of you joining with us live on the stream on the Red Tinted Glasses YouTube channel. If you have enjoyed the show, even if you are catching up, please do remember to leave a like, comment with your thoughts as well if you're on catch up. If you are listening on the audio platforms, when this episode gets published, thanks very much for tuning in. Remember to hit the subscribe. As I said, it's been great to see so many of you tuning in. We've seen Zimbabwe in the comments. I know there's a couple of you in Australia, America as well. So really good to see all of you involved from wherever you may be tuning in. But lads, thank you very much for your contributions tonight.
Pleasure.
Pleasure, as always.
And I suppose since Callum's not here, I'll end it with, come on you Reds!